Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bleav in Bengal podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Solomon Wilcots, joined by our Cincinnati Bengals insider, Charlie Goldsmith. And Charlie, I got to tell you, my Thanksgiving Day weekend was made all the better as I'm having my dessert. And the return of Joe Burrow was nothing more than spectacular. I think it made every Cincinnati Bengals fan, it made their whole holiday weekend the way that the Bengals performed, coming away with a surprising 32-14 win over the Baltimore Ravens. What stood out to you the most, particularly as Joe Burrow returned after missing 9 games?
You forget how much these guys just enjoy being around each other and playing football and having success, even if it's not on a huge, massive division title scale, even if it's just on a, road prime time, still Thanksgiving stage opportunity, just how much they seem to relish the opportunity, how much they seem to value the win, the joy that you could feel coming from Burrow, coming from all over that locker room after that game is a reminder of what it's all about and why, this team and this game and what they have going on together, why it's something they'll continue to try to build around, even if the Bengals playoff hopes aren't that great.
This offense has scored 30 or more points 5 times this season. They're now 3-2 in those games. But the fact that Joe Burrow in his very first game can lead this offense to 30 or more points, I didn't see any rust. I was shocked. You can't tell me after missing 9 games, a guy can just parachute in and pick up where he left off. I did not anticipate this, Charlie. As much as I respect and admire Joe Burrow, I just didn't think it was possible.
Now, the first half was far from perfect. There were some missed opportunities, sometimes where he was going too quickly, sometimes where he probably should have used his legs a bit more. All that was a big factor of why the Bengals had to settle for so many field goals in the first half. But after halftime, the throw to Tanner Hudson and the throw to Andre Iosivas for the touchdowns, they're as sharp and as impressive as, it doesn't get much better than that from Joe Burrow. He did a million different detailed things on each of those plays as he played quarterback at the highest level. And those 2 moments were moments you weren't sure you were going to get in his first game back, but you certainly got them.
The Bengals have now scored 30 or more points in 13 games since the start of last season. They're 7-6 in those games over the last 2 years when scoring 30 or more points. What does this say about Zac Taylor? Because they now had over 100 yards rushing in 5 of their last 6 games as well. So the run game has improved. Zac Taylor has consistently been able to dial up enough offensive plays to score that many points over the last couple of years. And by the way, they played each of their last 2 games without one of their top 2 receivers, Jamar Chase in the suspension, and now T. Higgins out due to concussion protocols, but yet they still put 30 on the board. What does this say about Zac Taylor, who I absolutely love him as a head coach and as a play caller? I just want our Bengals fans to be able to appreciate him a little bit more.
Let's go back to the touchdown passes to Hudson and Iosivas. Those are sophisticated, detailed plays that in both cases, or I guess in one case was against a linebacker and one was against a safety. In both cases, the Bengals turned what would be, neutral matchups, could go either way into plays and into windows where the Bengals had the clear advantage. Like, these weren't just throwing up the ball to Jamar and letting Jamar do something special. These were windows where either team could have made the play, but because of the play design and how one detail benefited or helped out another, and because of the plan the Bengals had against the blitz and all this detailed offensive stuff, how well it all worked together was a monumental factor in why each of those touchdown plays work. And those are signs of a good offense, a deep offense, an offense that has a strong idea of its identity.
Andre Iosivas, 1 catch for 29 yards for a touchdown. Surprisingly, though, Mitchell Tinsley was getting more work with T. Higgins out. He was targeted 9 times, but only 2 catches for 22 yards. There were just near misses, though. Those numbers could have easily been much better. I think he just need more opportunities, and I think those opportunities will pay off. Your thoughts?
And just getting T. Higgins back to him, what that can mean for the offense. There's so much kind of untapped territory that the Bengals offense didn't really get to lean into on Thursday, just because the way the game was played in Baltimore and different game situations. But we didn't get to see a ton of the play action deep ball opportunities. We didn't get to see a ton of Chase Brown in the passing game. There was a lot, we didn't see a ton of Mike Gesicki. There was a lot that we know the Bengals can do that for whatever game reason just wasn't the way the cookie crumbled on Thursday, but it's still a part of what this Bengals offense is.
How about the Cincinnati Bengals defense? 5 takeaways, 5 turnovers. They had 10 turnovers in the previous 11 games and had half of that in this one game against the Baltimore Ravens. Isaiah Likely fumbled just as he's going in for a touchdown. I thought that saved us. A red zone turnover on the interception, just as Lamar Jackson's arm was being hit, that ball just floated, and yet we're able to come away with the interception there. The Bengals were the defense. They were tackling better. They were playing better and certainly opportunistic. How do you credit their ability to get 5 turnovers, 5 takeaways from that Ravens offense and limit Lamar Jackson the way that they did? He had 3 turnovers in the game.
I start with the hustle. I start with, Jordan Battle giving up a big catch, but staying with it all the way until the goal line and knocking the ball out. I look at Myles Murphy, who ran a play 44 yards down the field, and then right after that has a quarterback hit that forces an interception to Demetrius Knight. And then I look at some of the disguises too. Al Golden called some really smart plays that ended up having, Joseph Osai with no one blocking him, Myles Murphy going up against a tight end, Jalen Davis coming free out of the slot. They had a bunch of smart blitzes that threw Lamar Jackson off. And when he was thrown off, that impacted his decision-making, and it all kind of snowballed from there for a defense that was aggressive, that was feisty, that was very ball-aware, and played by far its best game of the season.
4 fumbles, the Zay Flowers fumble, the Lamar Jackson fumble, the Isaiah Likely fumble. It was just one after another. You come away with 5 takeaways. That's playing very good ball. And again, to Lamar Jackson is one of the biggest potent weapons. Remember, they actually swept the Cincinnati Bengals last year in their 2 games. And now the Bengals find themselves just 1 or 2 games behind the 6-6 Pittsburgh Steelers, the 6-6 Baltimore Ravens, and they still have a game left against the Baltimore Ravens. Did you think at any point when Joe Burrow returned that they'd have any shot of potentially making the playoffs? And now there's still a slither of hope for Bengals fans.
I still need to see him beat the Bills and the Ravens again. This is what we've talked about being the toughest part of their schedule since the schedule came out in May. So since the Bengals winning out is kind of the only path, and since, even say just winning 3 straight at the end, even though it's, at Miami, Arizona, and Cleveland, it's always tough to win 3 in a row in the NFL. So I want to see the Bengals get through these really 2 difficult games first, and then they'll still have a really big challenge ahead of them, because even if they win these next 2, they'll need to win out and get some help. But it sure makes it more exciting and entertaining heading into Buffalo this week.
Yeah, I think help we'll talk about this a little bit later, but help our Bengals fans maybe get a clue what Bills team they could get. Will it be the one that gave up a ton of sacks, 8 sacks in all against the Houston Texans, and then turned around and had 249 yards rushing against the Pittsburgh Steelers? It's the most rushing yards allowed by a Steelers defense at home since O.J. Simpson had 200-plus rushing yards or more. I think they gave up 300 yards in that game back in 1975. So at the end of the day, the Buffalo Bills seems like they're 2 different teams, depending on which team you could get on any given Sunday.
Buffalo, though, has a lot of things that can give the Bengals trouble. You look at their running game, you look at what the running game can do to the perimeter, and then you look at the depth they have at tight end and how they've successfully featured their tight ends over the course of the season. It's a team that's weakness on offense is at receiver, but, the Bengals' strength is at corner. So that's the strength, their best matchup to go against. But even Baltimore, They didn't run the ball well, but they still did have success throwing the ball to their tight ends. So that's something the Bengals are really going to have to lock in on this week. There were still a few missed tackles that the Bengals had against the Ravens, still a few coverage assignment type kinks that the Bengals had to iron out. Still plenty of work to do heading into a very difficult road environment this week.
I want to go back to this game against the Baltimore Ravens, the night of Thanksgiving. High anticipation with the return of Joe Burrow, but certainly with the return of one Ja'Marr Chase after being suspended week 12. We all know the incident. He wrote an apology letter, and I'm sure he wanted to put his best foot forward. Anytime you get Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase on the field at the same time, it usually spells fireworks. He was targeted 14 times, Charlie, 7 catches, 110 yards, but no touchdowns. But yet and still, his presence on the field allowed for the Andre Yoshibaj touchdown. It allows for the other guys to come away with some production like Mike Gesicki. Just what did you see from Ja'Marr in that game, and how important is he going to be down the stretch?
Well, the offense, like we said, was a bit shaky early on against Baltimore.
Yeah.
And then there was a 3rd and 11 off-script play to Ja'Marr where Burrow bought time. Ja'Marr cut right. They were reading each other's minds. That followed by the moon ball down the sideline, the 43-yarder. That's what really got the Bengals offense going. Joe and Ja'Marr literally were the ones who provided the spark.
Yeah.
And then there were some other key clutch 3rd down conversions as well, where Burrow to Chase moved the chains. Like, having that tool, and that tool was fantastic against Baltimore, is such a big part of the Bengals foundation. It's something the Ravens have never seemed to have an answer for. There was no rust in terms of them being able to work on the same page. And that's always something that makes the Bengals dangerous to beat any team on any day.
Seems like this offense loves their tight ends. And now that Mike Gesicki is back, he's healthy. And you still have Tanner Hudson. You still have Noah Fant. I mean, this offense it seems like they're ready to hit their stride. Chase Brown is getting it going again. He had 100 yards from scrimmage for the 6th straight game this season in terms of rushing and receiving. But yet, you even alluded to it, he still can be used so much more in the receiving game, in the passing game. But it seems like this offense now is just now ready to begin to hit its strides with all hands on deck with the return of Joe Burrow as well.
And, when T comes back too, you're going to have a bit of a crunch for playing time. Like, is it going to be the kind of day where you want to live in more 12 personnel? And well, then you take Yoshibaj off the field, but you like what Yoshibaj brings to the table. Is today a day where, you want 11 personnel or maybe you want 12 personnel and run the ball more? And so it's not as much of a Gesicki day. Like, there are days where Gesicki, Fant, Yoshibaj, Tinsley, Sample, even there's been much more of an even split between Brown and Pirine in the backfield. Like, there are guys who could have much bigger roles than they do. Another sign of the depth that the Bengals find themselves being able to lean more and more into.
Well, Cincinnati Bengals, 123 yards rushing on 33 run plays. So they really are becoming much more productive in the run game. 6 consecutive games with 100 yards from scrimmage for Chase Brown, as we said. How much more will he be focused? Will they focus on him in the upcoming games? And what more can they do in terms of the passing game? Because I know they want to get him involved a little bit more there.
What is it? 6 or 7 straight games, a franchise record with 100+ yards for Chase Brown. So I love what they've been doing. I think they've done a great job of getting him the ball on the outside with room to run. He's also been a much more patient runner between the tackles.
Yeah.
It hasn't felt like he's had that one super crazy game where, he set some individual record or something like that, but he's just consistently been very, very good. Like a baseball player who just gets on base 2 times a day. And if you keep getting on base twice a day, you'll make a heck of a lot of money. That's the window that Chase Brown finds himself in right now, and it's a fantastic place to be.
Evan McPherson. I mean, he may have covered up maybe some things that were not as great about the offense. They were 1 for 6 down inside the red zone. And if you don't have someone like Evan McPherson, then maybe this game will be would have been much closer than what it was, at least on the scorecard. 32-14 was the win. But the Bengals, they could have maybe cashed in on a few of those red zone opportunities, again, going 1 for 6. But if Evan McPherson is going to go 6 for 6, I mean, he was automatic. And these weren't, I mean, 2 of them was of the 40-yard variety. 1 was of the 50-yard variety. He was on the road. The weather was there was some wind in the atmosphere there at M&T Bank Stadium. But Money Mac was as muddy as he's ever been on Thursday night.
And you're seeing the Bengals now being able to, Zac Taylor can call games with a ton of confidence in his kicker, and that allows you to do things like be more aggressive on third downs, be more aggressive when you're making field position oriented decisions. I know this wasn't this week, but it was the Patriots game where right before the half, you get the ball with like 20 seconds left, zip, 1, 2, 3, and all of a sudden you're setting up for Evan McPherson to make what was the franchise record field goal. So his ability to just be a game changer at that position is impacting the way that Zac Taylor manages these games, and it's been a complete bounce back season from Evan. He's maybe outperforming his contract if you look at the value that he's providing this season, and you can't ask for anything more, and you can't understate the difference that it does make.
What if I told you that Lamar Jackson has now gone 3 consecutive games without a touchdown pass? The reason why I bring that up is because we're going to play him again. We're going to see him again, and we don't know what we're going to get. But look, it's going to be a close race, I think, in the AFC North Division. We got 2 teams going in one direction, the Steelers and the Ravens, and the Bengals seem to be headed up with the return of Joe Burrow. So that's why I bring that up. That's a very interesting stat because we're not used to seeing Lamar play down to this level.
Obviously, his injuries that he's dealt with this year have been a big part of the story, but there were real moments where he showed elite elusiveness, and he was running around and he was making plays with his feet, and he looked mobile and agile. Now, not consistently, which is weird because you think like either you can run or you can't. So that leads me to think more just about the way he's reading the game. Maybe some reps that he missed are impacting him, but there were moments where he looked completely healthy, and that makes it even more baffling what we're seeing from Baltimore.
Yeah, it really is baffling. Let's look ahead to this Buffalo Bills game. Because this is one of the teams that's got the quarterback who was the MVP last year. And when you look at a team that can run the ball for 200 plus yards on any given Sunday, that's a formidable group. And Charlie, they did it without the 2 of their starting offensive linemen. That was even more impressive. This was a team that literally said they were going to be tougher than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I never saw the Bills as a team. I'm not going to say that they needed to prove their toughness, but I just didn't see them as that kind of team that wanted to out-tough and out-physical a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, or maybe one of the tougher teams in the league. But they did it. And that, to me, should capture the attention of the Cincinnati Bengals more than anything.
It's where that game changed was, we talked about how Buffalo ran the ball, but then the other side of it, that huge strip sack by Bosa. And it's a defensive line that hasn't been dominant over the course of the season, but it's a group they've invested very, very heavily in. So as a result, it's a team that, can create some havoc, can create some pressure, can create some panic because of the productivity that they've shown that they can get in the trenches. That's a good mindset for a team to be able to lean into when the weather gets cold. It gives you a sense of consistency, which is a reason why Buffalo has just been so good over the course of the last few seasons, on a year in, year out basis. And all that was on display as they, embarrassed Pittsburgh for a lot of the second half of that, for the entire second half of that game.
Sometimes a win can cover up deficiencies. And that's what I saw for the Buffalo Bills. They can't win on the perimeter in the passing game. Their receivers can't get open. They even just picked up Brandon Cooks. I mean, Keon Coleman struggling. Khalil Shakir is probably their best receiver, but you and I both know he's more of a slot receiver. He's not very big, so they use him to kind of get rubs and picks to screen him open. He's a very good football player, but they don't have anyone right now who's winning consistently for Josh Allen in the passing game at the wide receiver position. To me, that says that the Bengals should be able to match up. Now, I don't know how is it that we can't cover tight ends over the middle of the field, Charlie. So you got to help me out with that one, because if Dalton Kincaid is healthy and Dawson Knox is healthy and Jackson Dawes, they have 3 really good tight ends on this roster. And if you tell me that they're going to beat the Bengals with the passing game going through the tight ends, then there's no way that I'm going to Bleav that we can't cover 3 tight ends, and that's how they're going to beat us in the passing game.
Yeah, the Bengals linebackers, they haven't arrived yet in terms of being at, where they're here. They're making plays. They're not at that stage of their careers yet. And you're still seeing teams game plan to put those linebackers in the crosshairs. And Buffalo, that's how they're built. That's what they're built to do in the passing game with how they've invested in the tight end position. So you're going to have to see these linebackers, have a great week of practice, figure a lot of things out this week, make some strides this week, sit down for meetings with their coaches and take those next steps in their collective development to be where they need to be.
Yeah, to me, that's going to be very interesting, because I think our secondary should match up with their wide receivers. And that means we should be able to stack at the line of scrimmage. We're going to have to defend against a rushing attack. We may have to commit more defenders at the line of scrimmage, which means if you go 8 in the box, that means you have 1 less defender to defend in the passing game, which means more man-to-man coverage. But we should be able to match up man-to-man with their wide receivers. What do you see as the critical moments in this game? What do we need to see from the Cincinnati Bengals that allows them to beat a team like the Buffalo Bills, who still is one of the best teams in the AFC?
At some point, Josh Allen's going to run outside the pocket, and you just have to tackle him. It's simple. That's what this game's going to come down to. We can talk about the disguise blitz, cover buzz, and tackle Josh Allen when he runs. And that's an incredibly hard thing to do. But when you look at the tackling, that has been getting better for the Bengals, but still has been consistent over the course of the season. And you look at how that's something that Josh Allen turns to, his scrambling ability in the biggest moments of games. Get him on the ground, rally to the ball, get some help, join your friends, team up. All that's going to happen.
Yeah. Look, one last question before we say goodbye. And I want to know what you have on this, because I think it's something to watch as we move forward. Because I thought Joey B, during the game, he was coming off, he was taking off his shoe, putting on another shoe. And then before he goes back on the field, he was putting back on his playing shoes. And there was a report during the game is that he has a steel plate in the cleats that he's wearing when he's on the field, but yet he starts to lose some filling in that foot where he's wearing that steel plate. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. And look, I know as a player, the last thing I would want to do is every time I come off the field, take off shoes to put on another shoe and then have to put on a different shoe before I go running out on the field every single time I come off.
It's something he's mindful of. It's something he's clearly conscious of, but also Burrow ran pretty well. Like the touchdown to Hudson was an off schedule play. 3rd and 11 to Jamar was Burrow running around, running towards the sideline. There was a play, a 3rd down conversion where Burrow ran all over the pocket and threw a ball up. Mitch Tinsley got a defensive pass interference call. The Bengals get a 1st down. So Burrow did move well, and good things did happen when he ran. So that has me thinking a bit less about the shoe than maybe I would have because of the results and the product we saw on the field on Thursday.
Were you surprised by his mobility, how well he was able to move?
I guess I shouldn't be, right? He came back ahead of schedule. All this is just easy for him. But certainly for a normal human, I'd be surprised to see that.
Let me just say this, because I think people can take things for granted a little bit. I think the Cincinnati Bengals fans need to understand what a special player and what a special athlete Joe Burrow is. This is not a normal injury. This is the rate of recovery that you've seen here and the level that he's able to play at after this injury so quickly. It's not normal, Charlie. This is an outlier. And the fact that he's running around and planting and he can move on that foot, a grade 3 turf toe injury. It's substantial. And sometimes I think we literally take for granted that these athletes, it takes every ounce and every bit of their ability to rehab and recover, while at the same time work on your game. If you're trying to get healthy, that means you can't go and work on the other skills of throwing and the footwork and the timing of the passing game, because you're trying to put that energy into just getting healthy to get back on the field. He was able to do both during that 9-week span, where he seemed to maintain his level of play and timing in the passing game while also rehabbing and rehabilitating from the injury, which I just think that we ought to pay attention to that and be very grateful to have a player of this caliber with that kind of work ethic.
It's, they got the quarterback, they got the receivers, they got the running back, the offensive line's good enough. They just need to get that defense to the level of acceptability for the Bengals to really be back in the Super Bowl race.
And I think Zac Taylor said it after the game. He did. There's not another quarterback he would trade for Joe Burrow. And for all those things that I just mentioned, that's why I'm in agreement with him. There's not another quarterback. If you gave me a chance to get any quarterback around this league, and I like a lot of them, I wouldn't take any of them over Joey B. We want to thank you for joining us again on this wonderful edition of the Bleav in Bengal podcast presented by FanDuel. We want to thank you, Charlie, for joining us and bringing all your great expertise. Don't forget to join us next time, everyone. Thank you very much.